Hey, welcome back to the Modern Farming Podcast, where we bring you insights directly from the field about food, agriculture, and the incredible environment we live in. And once again, for like the third week in a row, Brad has completely knocked it out of the park. We have Dan Kittredge from the Bionutrient Institute, and he's joining us all the way from the Sunshine Coast in Australia. So we got Brad early morning. We got Dan early morning. Brad and I are in the evening here in Florida. But we're really excited to be talking with Dan. In our network, in our circles, Brad and I, Dan's name comes up often. And a lot of what we do, what we see comes from a lot of Dan's work and research. So we're really excited to have you on, Dan. Thank you for jumping on with us here on your Wednesday morning.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. Looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, as are we. So, Dan, if you could, give our listeners maybe your 30-second, introduction or your 30,000-foot view of the Bionutrient Institute and how you founded that, how you came across it, and what you're doing now.
30 seconds, eh?
30 seconds, 30 minutes, whatever you choose.
No, I'll try to keep it quick. Bionutrient Institute. We're the research wing of the Bionutrient Food Association. The Bionutrient Food Association we founded in 2010 with a mission to increase quality in the food supply. And by quality, we're talking about flavor and aroma and nutritive value. We have helped basically to create this term nutrient density to have a conversation about that variation in nutrient levels that we think exists. And when we created that term, at least for its current use in this conversation in 2007, 2008, there wasn't really a conversation around that. There wasn't really a word for it. So after doing a bunch of work through our parent organization, the Bionutrient Food Association, educating farmers and building this conversation around nutrient density, we started the research in 2016, 2017 to assess like how big is that nutrient variation in food and what causes it, if it is big, and can meters be built to test it if that variation exists. And so we've been doing that for now 7 or 8 years and found some pretty impressive things, which I'm sure we'll get into. How's that for short?
That was awesome.
Covers the broad strokes. Yeah.
Yeah, there's like 4 hours of discussion right there. So if you could just lead off, what Brad and I talk about a lot and what this series we're talking about is nutrient density. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but there seems to be a much larger push in the last couple of years for nutrient dense food. And I feel like that word nutrient dense or nutrient density is becoming a little more mainstream with people just even outside of agriculture. Are you sort of feeling the same thing, or do you see sort of a tide changing here?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, from creating the word in 2008 to founding an organization in 2010 to starting the research in 2016, 2017 to now having, a lot of the main players in the regenerative ag world. And, I was just speaking at Davos and the World Economic Forum in Switzerland, and all these big, massive players are like, yeah, we think nutrient density is probably the vector through which we can accomplish these holistic systemic solutions. I feel like our time is arriving. We've been working on it for a long time to create the word, to build the awareness around it, to begin to build some science around it. And then, it's at that point where a lot of movements have gone sideways, like organic, was a bottom up grassroots movement that had an impulse. And when it started to get big, then corporate profit interest came in through the government and turned it and, perverted it, you could argue. I think regenerative is, that's been happening to regenerative already. It came from a deeper impulse. There's some great insights there about regenerating our ecosystems and our cultures and our mindsets and everything else, but a lot of greenwashing coming in around it. And so nutrient density, I think, is at that moment now where people are starting to hear it and a bunch of people are jumping on the bandwagon. And instead of engaging a deep conversation and trying to have a definition that has integrity, people are like, I'm going to make my certification label, and I'm going to sell out to this big corporate and have them, have a marketing budget so that we can take the whole thing sideways. So it's a really interesting moment where, I think there's some amazing potential, but if we don't play our cards right, it'll get sideswiped like a lot of other things have in the broader food movement over the last 30, 40 years that I've been watching.
Yeah. And I've been saving this question for you. Nutrient, what is the definition? I know it's not just the 17 or 19 nutrients that a plant needs to grow and reproduce. There's a whole bunch of other, and some of those aren't necessarily nutrients, I don't imagine. So what are you closer to an actual definition?
I think that's the exciting question is, what I say is, as the guy who helped start this word in the first place,
right?
Anybody who says they think they know what nutrient density is, send them my direction, because I'm pretty sure I can't say what it is.
Right.
Like, at least if we're talking about a formal scientific definition, like my proposal is that the way we go forward is we collectively work scientifically to develop a definition. And then that would be the only way this movement has the capacity to not get sideswiped and perverted and greenwashed, is if we collectively actually do real hard science to define it. So with that said, I would like to lay out some of the things which I think it correlates with, as how do we frame that conversation. I would think nutrient density correlates with flavor and aroma and health-giving attribute for the person that eats it. I would think it correlates with pest and disease resistance for the plant or the animal that the food is coming from. I would think it correlates with decreased cost of production, increased economic viability, better soil health, better shelf life. I think better human health effect. Our thought is there is something that we can define empirically which checks all those boxes. And part of it is that it's a continuum. So it's not you are nutrient dense or you're not nutrient dense. It's a continuum of 1 to 100. This carrot is in the 80th percentile of nutrient density. This carrot's in the 40th percentile. This carrot's in the 20th percentile. It's not like I'm organic, you're not organic. I'm local, you're not local. It's my carrot is 40 out of 100. Your carrot's 30 out of 100. They're both pretty crappy, but mine's better than yours. I can't say mine's nutrient dense. I say mine's 40 out of 100. So this whole concept, when people say I'm producing nutrient dense, I say that's an incorrect use of the term. Until we define it, we don't have a definition. But when we do define it, part of that definition is this one is 65 out of 100. This is 37 out of 100. And that we build that continuum. And, the vision of the end game is that we have instruments, meters that can be used to test that are in everybody's hands. So we don't have certifications. We don't have labels. We don't need any of that marketing bureaucracy stuff because it's a straight up science definition. And with the technology we hold in our hands these days with our smartphones, the camera in the back of your smartphone it looks like good enough to do that test. So we skip right over governments being involved. We skip right over bureaucracies and certification systems and labels and all that kind of stuff. If we can find these levels of ratios of these nutrients equals 80 out of 100 and 20 out of 100, then we give that information to anybody who wants to build a meter. And if they build a meter and it's honest, we tell people this meter is one you can trust. And that one's one you can't trust. So that's the vision of how we would do it. We're an educational nonprofit. We're not a company. There is no investment money possible in what we're doing. I think that's really important to have a structure around which the science is done, which can be shown to not have any profit incentive associated with it. You shouldn't trust a label if somebody's making money off of it. You shouldn't trust a certification if somebody's got a buck to be made off of that certification, right? The science should be done openly and transparently in the commons through the scientific method, which is a beautiful thing. We should overlap the microbiome against the animal health and welfare, against the biochemistry, against the soil health, against the nutritional effects on humans, and look through original research to find those patterns. And when we find that, then we can say we've defined nutrient density in carrots. or in wheat or in cucumbers, but each crop is unique. Each crop requires a serious science project. And that's my argument, is that this is the strategy we can go through to really solve a lot of these deeper problems. But getting people to get on board with not making any money and doing something for the greater good, and sharing and collaborating instead of trying to control and be, in charge themselves that's a project. So we're working on it.
Yeah.
But that's the vision. That's the vision. Hopefully that made sense.
Totally.
For sure.
So let me ask you this. You talk about a device and you say, we provide the information to whoever wants to make a device. So is this the nutrient analysis that I assume you're already doing and countless others are probably doing as well. Is this, housed like in a server somewhere and everyone can just access this database, or how does that work?
All the data collection we've done over the past 8 years is completely open source. It's all on our website, all in the servers, and you can access it. And the app that we made, how that works, and the engineering of the meter that we made, all that's open source. Anybody can make 100 meters or 1,000 meters if they want to. Like, our whole principle is we do this thing openly. We keep it completely in the commons. It's not black box. It's not proprietary. It's not for profit. It's not like I'm going to do this research and then I'm going to charge you and make profit off every time you use that data. This is a pre-competitive space. We have to have a trusted data set that everybody can make money off of. Like, let there be lots of money made in this space, because that's the way the world works. I'm not saying if it's good or bad that's the way the world works. That is the way the world works.
Yeah.
So let's deal with that. But let's have there be something at the center, which is an algorithm, a trusted data set, which anybody who's skeptical and suspicious and wants to, badmouth can look at and say, is this good science or not?
Right.
And if we get enough good scientists to say, yeah, this is legit, then that's the integrity upon which the whole thing is built. But yeah, the idea for us as the Bionutrient Institute is we work with allies to build this database, to do the research, to publish the results in peer-reviewed published journals. And at the end of that result, like the 80th percentile of quality in beef is this omega-6-3 ratio, this vitamin B12 level, this zinc level, this polyphenol level. And the 40th percentile is this, and the 20th percentile is that. When we publish that result, then anybody who's got a company that wants to make meters and sell them should have access to that data. And let there be 18 different meters out there that can be used to test beef quality. Sure. Awesome. Or let it be an app on your phone. If Apple or Google or Samsung wants to work with us,
exactly.
Let them use it. Like, we're not trying to sell meters. We're trying to have a process by which what quality is can be defined and trusted, and then give it to the market, give it to the companies to make a ton of money. That's the idea.
Yeah, based on their own marketing and how they want to take it to the field.
How good their meters are, how well they work, how good, it's okay. There's lots of different cell phones out there. It doesn't have to be all just one meter. It doesn't have to be all one cell phone, right? It doesn't. And the guy who's in the, who's on the ranch and wants to check his beef before he sends it to the slaughterhouse can have a different meter than the consumer has at the grocery store, which is a different meter than the one at the packing house, at the slaughterhouse, So all through the supply chain, you can have different instrumentation, which is perfect, which is awesome. But let's have a definition of what quality is that we can agree on. Because if there is something scientifically that correlates with increased human health, increased soil health, increased animal welfare, increased all those other things, that's our vision of what nutrient density is. And it's a continuum. Yeah.
And I've been talking about that technology 6 years ago when I first had one of your meters in my hand and was shooting carrots and spinach with it. And I say at least once a week. It's typically with growers, but consumers, that this is the technology that will change how you think about how you grow. This is how I, as a consultant, get a grower that won't take a couple of steps, whether it's cover crops or manures or compost. So once they understand that makes a difference in the quality of their food. And once they see they can get paid 3 times, and I know it doesn't take, we don't have to sacrifice quality for quantity in the long run, but in the short run, sometimes they do. And that's that technology just that's a home run. I mean, that just seals a deal, in my opinion.
I think when we get to a point where the consumer can test at point of purchase, I like to say if there's 3 bags of carrots on the shelf and one's Bunny Love and one's Organic and one's Bolthouse Farms, you choose which one's 80, 20, and 40 out of 100. But if, 8 people from one city all have a meter and they flash a light and they find that one brand is 80 and they post that on Instagram and Facebook, my bet is that brand's going to the shelf and the other brands are going to sit. Yep. And that's going to go to the wholesaler, and that's going to go to the packer, and that's going to go to the farmer. And the farmer is going to get told, we don't want your carrots this week because they're not moving. And we're going to tell the other farmer, we want all your carrots. And that's the way it's going to shift, is basic economics, basic self-interest. If the consumer can choose the best thing for themselves and their families, it's enlightened self-interest. It's actually not a bad strategy. Yeah. It's not a bad strategy.
Wow. So you already have built a device or a unit to test?
Yeah, we started this process with the research in 2016. We sort of, like, after doing all this education work for a number of years and working with farmers and helping farmers understand how to work more well with nature, which basically is what it comes down to. When the microbiome is functioning more well, the plants are healthier, your cost of production is lower, your pest and disease resistance is better, et cetera. So after working with farmers to get these results, and it sure looked like better flavor, better aroma, better, we thought better nutrient levels. We said, if this is true, we should be able to bring it to scale. And how do we bring it to scale? We said, through this vision of a meter and consumers being able to test. So we started that research. We designed the strategy in 2016 and started the work in 2017. We basically had 3 questions. One question was, is there a dramatic nutrient variation in food? Because talking to the scientists at that point in time, they all basically said, no, not really, 2%, 5%. The second question was, if there is nutrient variation in food, what causes it? Because we thought maybe it was like something like soil health as opposed to genetics or soil type. Talking to other scientists, they said, maybe it's 2%, maybe it's 5%. It probably has to do with genetics or soil type, maybe some basic management practices, but it's small. You're not going to find anything. And we thought different. We thought maybe, no, that's not the case. So does nutrient variation exist? Is it significant? If it does exist, what causes it? Is it soil health, or is it like soil type or genetics? And the third question was, is it possible to build a consumer priced handheld flash of light meter? Because people were definitely saying, no, that's Star Trek. There's no possible way you can build a handheld meter that somebody can hold and afford that could, with a flash of light, tell you what something is made out of. That's no way it can happen. So, I went to college and I studied like physics and chemistry and shit, and like, pardon my French, but I was like, I think there's something here. And so we started this research project, and by 2021, we had tested 10,000 crops, samples, 25 crops, hundreds of farms, multiple continents, all kinds of different management practices and soil types and fertility programs and points of purchase and labels and certifications, and built meters. And by 2021, we were able to release a handheld calibrated meter that could test individual nutrients in a couple crops. So with a carrot, it can tell you the level of antioxidants. With zucchini, it can tell you the level of polyphenols. It cost $375. It was, Bluetooth to your phone with an app, and we built the app, we built the meter, we reproduced them. We published a paper in Nature, right? Nature is considered to be a legitimate scientific journal, Science Communications. And we showed this handheld meter at a consumer price point can test nutrient levels that vary massively in food at point of purchase. So we were able to release that meter in 2021. We said, look, nutrient variation is massive. It connects to levels of life in the soil and not to organic or brand or grocery stores or farmers markets or local. And you can build a handheld consumer priced flash of light meter that can test nutrient variations. And so that was our proof of concept for this nutrient density strategy. Like, only if nutrient variations exist is nutrient density a possible thing? Only if that nutrient variation connects to soil health are all the regenerative outcomes, a viable piece of this puzzle and argument. And only if consumer handheld meters can be built, can we skip having certification labels and all the rest of that stuff and go straight to direct assessment, which was our grand vision. So, we made that meter. We told everybody, look, it is not testing nutrient density. It's only testing these individual nutrients. That's all we know, is that these nutrients do vary dramatically. Now that we know they vary and meters can be built, now we're going to try to figure out what nutrient density is. And figuring out what nutrient density is a much more complicated and expensive project. And we didn't want to start that until we thought this was a plausible vision in the first place. So that's what we're doing now, is we're trying to go crop by crop. It's $1 million plus a crop to do all the science, to overlay the management details and the soil and the biochemistry and the microbiome and the human health and everything else. And step by step, it's just work. You got to do the job. You got to raise the money. You got to hire the staff. You got to do the science. You got to publish the papers. And so that's where we're at right now, is just trying to bust it out crop by crop.
Just work.
Just do it, right? You're a farmer. Yeah. You're a farmer, like, what needs to get done. You can sit around and talk about it, or you can just go out and do it. So somebody's got to do the work.
Yeah. Really impressive. So what exactly is the device you have? I realize every device is going to be different. How do you expect the consumer to use it, or how do you envision the consumer to use that?
I don't expect the consumer to use the device we made.
Okay.
The thing we made was the most rudimentary 3D printed, basic build it in your garage thing, because we're a small nonprofit running on charitable donations. But the point is, if we can do it, if a small nonprofit working on charitable donations can build a handheld consumer priced ray gun that we can publish in Nature works, then you think Apple can do it? You think Samsung can do it? You think Google can do it? Right? There's a Texas Instruments. I mean, there's a bunch of companies out there that if we can do it, they damn well can do it. So that's all we're saying, is it's possible. And anybody who says it's not, well, here's our paper in Nature that says it is. So use that for whatever it's worth. So my thought is, end game is, it is just one of the cameras in your phone. And you don't have a separate meter. Literally, it's an app. You open up the app, and the camera flashes a light like you're taking a picture. And through the light that bounces back, you're able to see that carrot is 20 out of 100 or 80 out of 100. So that's the end game, is it's not a separate meter. And as I understand it, the cameras that are in our phones right now are able to do this. So the issue is not building the meter. The issue is, what is nutrient density? And that is a science project that requires collaboration and money and transparency. And that's the struggle, is organizing the broader movement around a collective process to do that together, and not go sideways, and not try to be rich, and not try to control it, and not try to turn it. So we'll see.
So fascinating, because we talked to Will Harris, White Oak Pastures.
Yeah.
We talked to him a couple weeks ago, and it was interesting to hear. And in this circle that we're all in, it seems like we hear it more often, but he wasn't really that interested in selling his beef across the country either. He was actually said, I believe, Brad, he didn't he say that he would rather not?
Yeah.
Which is so interesting. Any other industry, it's like, hey, we're out in front on this device. Let's patent it, put an Apple logo on it, and sell it to 500 million people around the globe.
I call it being colonized or being indigenous. Is your objective to be empowering to everyone around you, or to maximize profit and control? And part of the regenerative ethos is like, we're in this together.
Yeah.
And me getting tons of money and power and being rich is not the agenda. All of us being empowered together is the agenda. If I've got a basic quality of life, why do I need to get rich? Probably it's going to screw me up. Right? My friends aren't going to be friends anymore because they're going to be wanting something from me. Like, we got to get out of this thing where like more power and more money is a good thing. That's perverse. This is what's causing all the war and all the bad stuff that's happening.
Yeah.
You got to get back to humility, and a simple is great. And you don't need a lot. So, but not everybody in the movement's thinking that way. There's always like, it's tricky because $50 million. Well, I mean, I deserve $50 million. No, I mean,
yeah, I need that boat. I need the yacht.
Damn planet. Can you think about everybody? Can you be? I mean, is it called being a good Christian? You know, like just think about everyone.
Do you think the capitalism behind it, or put the potential capitalism that could get behind something like this, is and maybe will be a challenge for this type of technology?
I mean, we got so many challenges in our culture, their states of mind, and we've been taught, and how we, what we learn in school, and what our media teaches us, and everything else. I think the principles of science are good. Like if you actually do use the scientific method honestly and honorably, and you do have scientific instruments in people's hands, that could be a beneficial thing. And that could drive us down the road to systemic solutions that are beneficial. So I'm 1 out of 8 billion people on this planet, right? Everybody's 1 out of 8 billion. We can only do what we can do. For me, this is one thing I think I can do, which could have a net positive impact going down the road. But it could also go sideways, right? Lots of good ideas get turned into things that are horrible.
Yeah.
Nuclear bombs are not a great thing. And, it was some physicist who was totally well-meaning who figured it out, right? So, yeah. I don't know.
So fascinating. So fascinating. So, okay. All right. So now that we solved that problem, because I'm just so, Brad and I talk about these devices, or this type of device, all the time. And I always thought maybe the consumer would have this in their hand, as the soccer mom and dad are walking down the aisle at their local grocery store, and they scan the vegetables, and they're like, yeah, I got a bunch of 10s in here. Right.
Yeah.
But what you're saying is maybe more the, who would utilize this, and how would they implement a device like that?
An agronomist, the farmer, the packer, the wholesaler, the retailer, the chef, the nutritionist, the consumer, the coach.
Yeah.
Everybody in the supply chain could have access to the meter, and in their version, it's appropriate for them. If you're in a packing house and you're running through, 10,000 lemons every 5 seconds, you're flashing lights in a different kind of way than, somebody who's an agronomist who's going out into the field and flashing a couple lights at the crop while it's still growing, who is different than the person who's the chef, at the farmer's market, going and trying to figure out who's got the best stuff. So there's an opportunity for there to be a whole suite of different instruments out there. For me, people get stuck on the instrument and the meter, and they miss the point that all the meters have to be calibrated to a definition of quality.
Right.
And until we can figure out what that is, none of these meters can work. So stop thinking about the meter. I mean, that's a thing. I call it a shiny object, right? It's a shiny object. It catches people's attention. They get all excited about it, but you have to go down the rabbit hole and realize it's not about the meter. It's about what quality is. And once you figure that out, then we can have this unraveling of the potential of this whole concept. But it does require that basic science to be done first. And that's where we're at. It's like I said, it's $1 million a crop, and ideally it's done in collaboration. And what I see across the movement is a bunch of different people, groups that are starting to take this up and starting to claim it as their own, and starting to do one little bit of it here or one little bit of it there. And I've been saying to people forever, like, can we please collaborate? Can we please work together? Is it possible to have a coalition of allies that are working on this together? Because, I mean, it should be done in a collaborative fashion. I mean, think about the national, what was the Human Genome Project? Like back in the 90s, when the Human Genome Project was being done, they're like, this is way too big for any one university to figure out. We need a global collaboration to figure this thing out. And they spent a few years, they raised a bunch of money, and they figured it out. Like, I would say nutrient density should be like that. Like, it's something that we should be broadly working on together. Understand that the basic idea is human health, flavor, aroma, shelf life, pest disease resistance, soil health, farm viability, all these things we think are all basically just different facets of that same thing. Let's look at it from our agronomy perspective and our nutrition perspective and our biochemistry perspective and our microbiology perspective. Let's use science thoughtfully to tease this thing out and develop that 1 to 100 continuum. I think this is an amazing project that could reverse chronic disease. It could reverse climate change. It could really powerfully, positively impact a bunch of these things that look like they're existential issues, which are not existential issues if we work together. They're only existential issues if we keep being selfish and trying to profit and control for ourselves. When we realize we're in this together and start acting that way, these aren't problems anymore because we can turn them around. We can solve them real fast.
Right.
But we have to behave in a collaborative fashion. So,
Dan, I know a couple of years ago you kind of shifted gears and started a beef study. Is that completed? I mean, you kind of focused, and why did you focus on beef? And I kind of know why, but I want you to talk to that.
So the preliminary work, which was to see, does nutrient variation exist? What seems to cause it? And can meters be built? That was the thing we started in 2016, 2017 and completed in 2021. When we got that done, we said nutrient variation is massive. It seems to be connected to soil health and meters can be built to test it. We said, great, now we have to figure out what nutrient density is. And we said, we have to do one crop at a time. We can't do, each crop is $1 million. So if somebody wants to write a $25 million check, we can do 25 crops at a time. But we didn't have anybody writing a $25 million check. So we said, let's start with one crop. And so we started with beef because beef is the thing that, there's more acres of the planet used in the production of beef than anything else. And if we're thinking about the environment and climate and the ecology and stuff like that, why not focus on beef? Cucumbers are nice, but there's not a lot of land spent on cucumbers, right? Beef is it's a real thing. So we can figure that out and begin turning the super tanker on beef. That'll have major impacts on other stuff. So, it's taken a lot longer than we thought it would. We're still waiting for the data back from the lab, even though a lot of these samples we sent to them 3 years ago. We've got, I'm hoping by mid-year we have it done. Beef, we have like our definition of quality done. I'm hoping we get our final data back from the lab in the next 2 weeks. It was supposed to get it 6 months ago, then 4 months ago, then 2 months ago, then, it's just like one of those things, you got to wait for the science to get done, and so when we get the data back, we've got our standards board, that's the biochemists, the microbiologists all ready to digest it, and then we're ready to publish it. So hopefully we'll have that done this year. We're starting on wheat next. It's another big crop that takes a lot of acres and has a big impact on people's diets. And, is complex. Like we like complex things, because you don't just eat the wheat, you eat the bread. And what happens to the wheat between wheat and bread is a lot. And it's not just the wheat that you harvest, it's the quality of the bread that you eat. And so there's, let's look into this whole thing. Because if we're going to be honest about it, we got to deal with all these pieces and let's engage a real serious science project. So I may be tilting at windmills and taking on the hard things first. Maybe that's not good business, but
well, I think it makes perfect sense. And so are you just measuring the meat, or are you going deeper and going into the gut microbiome of the cow and what it's eating, and so and then even feeding it to people?
The weight, exactly, all those things. So every farm we took part, and we had farmers from 4 continents who took part in this. They sent in a steak from 3 different animals, and we looked at over 100 nutrients in each steak. They sent in the manure from the animals. So we looked at the microbiome in the manure, and then we looked at we could see what species of plants were in their fodder from their manure as well. We had them send in a sample of the fodder, whether it was a TMR or it was a mixed pasture ration or hay, whatever they were eating in the last 90 days of their life. We had them send in the soil that fodder grew in. We had them answer a whole bunch of management questions about, what was the breed, what was the age, what was the gender, how are they, moved or not moved, or, all kinds of stuff like that. And then a subset of that meat was fed to humans for human health trials. So we watched what happens to blood in your urine after eating it. And and then gave the humans some Impossible Burger too, so fake meat, which has on the package, right? If you look at the grass-fed beef and the corn-fed beef and the Impossible Burger, on the back of the package, according to the USDA, they're all the same thing. They're not the same thing, but from what a consumer sees, what the government requires you to say in the back of the package, they are completely uniform. So this is part of the whole unpacking of the conversation is like, the labels we see are not actually telling us scientifically the truth of what's going on inside that package. And so, so only when we have the human health data and the microbiome and the biochemistry and the management and the forage assay and all that, can we actually give that data to the scientists and say, okay, you microbiologists, you tell us which animals you think were most healthy and least healthy and scale all the ones in the middle. And we give the biochemistry data, the minerals and nutrients to the biochemists. We say, you tell us which steak looked most well. We give the agronomists that data. And then when they all come up with their own private answers, then we put it all back in the middle and say, are there any patterns? And that's how we define nutrient density. We don't say this is the answer. We engage a scientific process of looking deeply in all these different fields of science, engaging credentialed people in each of these fields to look at the data sets, to, with their best knowledge, rank things from good to bad. And then you engage statistics and you say, where are the patterns? It's called original research, which means we don't know what we're going to find.
Yeah.
We might not find anything.
Right.
And if we don't find anything, that's our answer. We didn't find anything. Or we need to look farther, which is what scientists always say. Well, we need to look further. But I think, who knows? I don't know. I think we're going to find something. I hope we're going to find something. It's been a lot of work and a lot of money to not find anything. But the scientific method is you don't put your finger on a scale. You engage honestly and openly, and you let the data guide you. So that's the process. Yeah.
Amazing. So you said it's $1 million per crop to cradle to the grave, right? Like to do everything, plant it, get the seed, care for it, apply to it, whatever it has to do.
We're not doing any trials. We're simply asking people to send in the thing that they harvest.
Okay.
We want to survey the global supply chain. We want samples of beef or samples of wheat. So we're doing wheat right now. We're designing the study. We had to look at all the different genetics, all the different wheat growing areas, all the different management practices. And we want to make sure we get samples from farms in 6 continents that are raising wheat of different genetic types in different soil types, in different environmental conditions, so we can collect all that data. We are not doing side-by-sides. We're saying, look, there's a vast diversity of quality in the market right now. Let's sample that diversity, run it through the lab, and see what we find. So we're absolutely not doing side-by-side trials. Gotcha. We're going to every farm is a research farm. Every farm has its own data. So we collect all that management data. We collect all that environmental conditions data. We collect all the biochemistry and the microbiome data. And then, if you got 800 different samples with all that metadata, you can find patterns. But it's an epidemiological style of scientific analysis. It's not a side-by-side replicated randomized trial style. There's different ways you can do science, and side-by-side trials are designed to tease out one factor.
Yep.
We're not trying to tease out one factor. We're trying to develop a scale of 1 to 100 in quality. So you have to design this scientific study differently. Yeah.
So does all of these, sorry, my camera, so do all of these samples go back to a single lab, or do you have labs all over the world that kind of single lab?
Everything's got to be run through the same machine.
Makes sense.
Otherwise there's an experimental, variable there.
So you got some consistency.
Has to be.
Really fascinating. Go ahead, Brad.
You're getting the management practices from all of these growers too. So, I mean, you're getting some soil. I mean, because
you get the soil, we assess the soil, we do microbiome and all kinds of different things. We ask them 100 questions. What was the variety? Where did you source it? How did you prepare the ground? With what? How many passes? Did you cover crop beforehand? What did you put in the cover crop? How did you terminate it? What was your fertility program? Did you inoculate? With what? Did you side dress?
Right.
Did you spray? Did you irrigate? With what? How often? We want as many, and then we're geolocating so we can look at weather patterns and what happened this year. As much environmental conditions data as possible, overlaid on the microbiome, overlaid on the biochemistry, overlaid on the human health trials. We're just trying to do a really good science project and say, what are the factors that seem to correlate and what seems to be relatively better and relatively worse? Because only when you have that honest assessment can you begin to go to growers and say, look, it looks like, this inoculant really works and this one's junk. This fertility program, this foliar spray is awesome. This soil testing correlated with this fertility program really works. This soil testing doesn't seem to have any good. This fertilizer, all these fertilizers over here are completely junk. Like, we can begin to tease out all kinds of amazing guidance for farmers once we can define what quality is and understand what causes it. Right?
Amazing.
And then the farmers don't have to trust an agronomist or a salesperson, right? They can have their own feedback loop. And so people who are actually helping farmers do a good job are going to get more business. And people that are selling farmers, a bill of goods,
Snake oil,
lose business. Like, let's have the farmer have scientific knowledge about what actually helps do a better job, as opposed to shiny, glossy, marketing implement, sexy, recently out of college saleswomen. The strategies that are used to get farmers to buy stuff are not honorable. And it ends up with them being, carrying a lot of debt, having their land getting worse and worse shape, having their kids get sick because of what they're putting on the land. We got to figure out a way to help the farmers make more intelligent decisions. And the way to do it, from my mind, is you actually help them understand how to make more intelligent decisions with good, solid research and guidance that doesn't belong to anybody, doesn't have an agenda to sell them something.
Yeah. You don't have a $30 subscription per month to get the data.
Exactly. This is all
really
open.
Fascinating.
It's all open. And any farmer who takes part in the process, if they want to sell their data, it's their data to sell, right? If there's a company that wants access to their data, great, pay me for it. But as opposed to the companies just taking the farmers' data and monetizing it and not having the farmers have access to it, let's turn this thing around on its head. It's the farmers' data. Why don't they get to own it? And if they want to make profit off it, go take my, it's going to cost you. You should have the right to sell it if you want to.
What's really interesting there is that you said that, the farmer should own it. That was one of the challenges early on when we brought, precision ag to growers in the Midwest in the United States, or anywhere, I assume, in the United States. There was a point where growers became very concerned on who owns their data. And you just make a really good point there. I mean, it's their data. They should own it. There's always this question. And then
into the John Deere system, they don't own it.
Yes. So, okay, let me ask you this then. Okay, so you get a bunch of data back from all over, producers all over the country. They go to a single lab. There is a format that you run all these through. What you're looking for, as you've said several times, you're looking for patterns that trend in a way that makes this wheat, this beef, this corn, or whatever it be, more nutritious. And I just butchered that whole thing, but I'm just trying to simplify it to get to the point of, is there any moment in time in that process where you say, okay, let's actually taste it? Is there a subjective evaluation here at all?
We could do. I mean, there's a lot more that we could do that we haven't done. $1 million a crop is really actually completely bare bones budget, which doesn't involve working with any, if you get a university involved, boom, 40% of the top goes to overhead. If you're not a grassroots, organization who is paying people insufficient salaries with no benefits, if you get proper PhDs, everybody all getting everything else in a nice truck, it's easily many, many millions of dollars to do this job. So when I say $1 million a crop, I'm talking absolute bare bones, rudimentary, basic definition level. Okay, we've got a rough scale to work with. We hope in 3 years, more research has been done and it's a more nuanced scale. And in 5 years, an even better one. We hope it's an iterative and evolving definition based on more knowledge coming in over time. So flavor would be great. And we could bring in all kinds of, sommeliers and things like that. There's a million things we could do and should do, but for the time being, there's nobody putting $1 million into even one crop. So right now it's just a big fantasy. And I talk about it all over the planet and all kinds of people get excited, but the number of people that show up with a $5 a month donation is remarkably small, right? Everybody thinks it's a great idea and no one's willing to get out their, their wallet and make a tithing payment to the Church of, Nutrition. Like we have to figure out a way to get people to say, I'm in this, because the government's not funding it. Industry's not funding it, right? I mean, nobody who's got a vested interest in the current supply chain is going to fund this thing.
Unless they can find a way to monetize it, really. I mean, I hate to say that.
So it has to come from we, the people.
Yeah.
If the people who are profiting off of us and controlling us don't have an interest in funding it, then we can't wait for them to do it. We have to do it. We have to get off our duffs and actually put our 2 cents into the can. And so there's a million ideas about what could and should happen, but it's got to start with enough cash in the till to actually get the basic job done. And that's where we're stuck. And I don't know. I haven't figured that one out. I just haven't gotten there yet. I'm working on it, but if you guys got suggestions, I'm happy to have a longer conversation offline, but this is where we're stuck. This is where we're stuck. And we just haven't been able to figure out how to inspire people to kick in for something that could really, really, really change a lot of things for the better.
Yeah. If the consumer really knew how important it was to their health, and I mean, it's just, and it gets rid of everything. I mean, all the labels, are you conventional? Are you, I don't even like people call me a regenerative ag consultant. I like just soil health. Yeah. And that brings me to, I mean, what is the main common denominator when you're looking at all this data and you've been doing it for a lot of years? Is it carbon or soil biology or biodiversity? What's the main driver you think you see and that changes things?
It looks like life is the foundational one. It looks like level of life. So quantity and diversity of life, which foundationally is the microbiome. Only when the microbiome is flourishing should we expect anything else to function well. A lot of other things correlate closely with that, but not always. So you can have high levels of carbon because you built a backyard garden bed out of compost and it's not soil.
Right.
And so things aren't working well. And you got tons of carbon, but not high quality food. So, you give me any circumstance and I can say, in most cases, yes, but in some cases, no. So if you get a big wheat farm, a 3,000 acre, wheat farm, if they have higher levels of organic matter than their neighbors, the odds are that they're going to have higher levels of nutrients, because the only way you get higher levels of organic matter in 3,000 acres is by building it with a biological system. But in the backyard garden where you're dumping compost on, that all bets are off.
Yeah.
So, I would say that carbon is definitely going to be correlative. The primary thing that we seem to see above and beyond everything else is the function of the microbiome, which makes a lot of sense if you understand biological systems.
Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Which needs carbon and biodiversity of crops or whatever. So, yeah.
The more the diverse the plant species are, the more the diverse the microbes are.
Yeah.
If the soil, but it also needs air. If your soil's tight, there's no air, the microbes die. Also needs water. The soil's dry, it's dirt, there's no life, they're dead. So, I mean, it needs cobalt, right? With no B12, there's no microbes. So there's a bunch of environmental conditions that must be present for life to function at a high level. And any one of those things not being present is gonna break the chain and you're not going to get the results.
Right.
So,
right.
It seems like it seems like we're talking like this, like there's an algorithm, like the data that we're collecting, that you're collecting throughout all of these farms and crops. It's like the more you feed it, the stronger, the more accurate it becomes.
kind of like AI. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like an algorithm, right? Like you just keep feeding that chat GPT a bunch of info, and it's gonna eventually spell it right.
That's the idea. And when
Yeah.
we're and not too far down the road, you got a little handheld gizmo. You're flashing at the leaf of the plant. You don't need to send anything off to assessment for a lab for a sap analysis.
That's so cool.
You got something that costs $150 that you get readings in real time, and you can modulate and make your fertility modulations in real time. And so any farmer on any continent of any scale can have access to this wisdom to optimize system function, which is going to create a dynamic where we don't need, insecticides and fungicides and fertilizers anymore, where we're going to have better soil health, better ecosystem function, lower cost of production, higher nutrient levels.
And really, technically, the more people who have this device in their hand, the more the algorithm's getting fed this information. And
if
so
we start acting like we're on the same team, we can all win together. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Mind blowing. Mind blowing. I feel like, you can just see how many vultures would be sitting on the wire, like, oh, I could rule the world with this, because we all have to eat.
Have to decide how we're going to go about it, because there's already a bunch of people who are using the word nutrient density right now, making a bunch of noise on social media, talking to funders.
Yeah.
Not thinking this way. There are already vultures in this space making their moves.
You bet.
And they're philosophically not trying to accomplish this. So I'm not going to name names, but you can look around and you look deeply at who's doing what, and you got to be discerning, right? This is about quorum sensing. It's about, we are all people. We're all microbes in this ecosystem, and we got to learn who's an ally and who's a pathogen. And we just got to start organizing our attentions and education and conversations accordingly. It's up to us right now to actually affect how this goes down. If we sit back passively, the vultures, have got good odds. If we own it, we can totally pull this thing off.
Yeah.
Sorry, I interrupted. You were saying something. I interrupted.
No, I'm just, look, at the end of the day, I'm a capitalist, right? Like at the end of the day, I love money. I love stuff, right? And I could just see everything you're saying. I know, I feel what you're saying. Like I feel it. It's not just I'm hearing it. Because I look at this and I know there's other players in the marketplace, and they're bringing to the market this device or a technology, and I see where it's going. And I just feel exactly what you're saying. And Brad and I have talked about this device or a device like it for guys like us who are never going to be, one of the big five, right? Where Brad and I are never going to run a 30, $40 billion corporation. But our little consulting firm here somewhere in Florida, or, I do some work in the Midwest, we could stand to make a really good living. But we could change a lot of people's lives. We could potentially keep farm ground in the family, because one of my biggest concerns for a lot of growers that I talk about is, we talk about soil health, and you just said it, we're like a 3-5 year process in soil health. I actually had a grower tell me, Nick, what you're telling me about soil health and the products that you recommend and the system that you're describing takes a long time. He's like, I don't know if I'll be here that long. Meaning he's probably going to have to sell his ground, because they're going to offer him some ungodly number for an acre here in Sarasota County, Florida. And so it's just really sad to see that flipping. And then, who's going to own the food, and basically who already does own and control grain movement around the globe is about a handful of companies.
Yep. But, the system is what the system is right now, and we can rail about it, or you can just, take steps to make things better.
Right.
And, I was up in the, upper Midwest not long ago, and I was at, big University of Minnesota, and at the research farm, and they were looking at the, at the maps of pollution in the aquifer. And like, you know, you can't drink green. I mean, Iowa's worse, right? There's no clean water in Iowa, period. And like, kids are dying in 3rd grade from cancer, and everybody knows it. Everybody knows it. And so how do we turn this train around? And, you know, if we can create a dynamic where the farmer has the knowledge to engage different practices that are going to make them a better living, that, oh, by the way, is going to create a dynamic where their kids aren't going to die from cancer also. You know, we've got incentives everywhere for this thing to happen. But it does require some basic, honest, truthful data and a framework to understand and share that. And let people make a good living, you know, like fine, make a good living. Wonderful. But people should not be able to make a good living. Do you need to become a multi-tens of millions of dollars heir thing? Probably not. Are you willing to control yourself a little bit and, you know, give back to the greater good? Or do you have to constantly try to maximize, you know, personal profit? It's an internal struggle for a lot of us, maybe, or maybe not. I mean, I don't have the
you know, if I just pay off my house, I'm a happy guy.
Right. Maybe you'd like to have would like to have a beach house, and, you know, I can get a nicer car, and, you know, I got kids, and I set them up too, and, you know, it's a slippery slope. It's a real slippery slope.
Absolutely. And in any endeavor, that's why I see what you're doing, and I can just see, you know, how many people who know probably much deeper than I do what you're doing, and probably foaming at the mouth and having these conversations behind your back saying we could exploit the heck out of this kind of technology.
But that technology is what solves everything. I mean, it fixes everything, you know, from the farmer to the consumer to, I mean, the bad guys in the middle that take the beating, but just to be able to measure the crop and then make the changes, and then knowing that when they make their crop better, they're going to get paid a premium for it. It all goes back to the farmer, and everybody, to the consumer, benefits.
I think the vast majority of people in the system would benefit if we could engage in a collaborative fashion.
Right now,
and
we talked about it
that are profiting, you know.
We had some guests on earlier, and we talked about the same thing. You know, if our kids, if we could start like today, and our kids who are in elementary school start to eat a balanced meal, a nutritious meal for school, at school, and then they come home, and us as parents are able to seek out this really high nutritional value food and put it in front of them. Everybody benefits, right? The United States of America, the entire world, right? That's where we get the kids who make the new technology, right? That make the prosthetic arms or the beating hearts and from you know, lamb's cells or whatever. Like that's what happens. But now you see, right now we have so many kids. I told the story earlier that, you know, there are some people, their only experience with food is in a box that is frozen, and you put it in a microwave. And that's their only experience with food. And that isn't creating like the next revolutionary, right? The next visionary who's going to change the world is probably not growing up eating microwavable food. And I just think the whole world benefits from nutrient dense food.
Yeah, no, it's a real consideration, because you eat in junk for 2 or 3 generations, and you start dying. You start dying, right? I mean, we've got teenagers and people in their 20s that are really having a hard time, and they're like, my body, they're diagnosed with chronic diseases. They're on multiple pharmaceuticals, right? In the States, at least. I mean, I travel around the world, and it's not quite as bad in other parts of the world, but in the States, it's pretty damn bad. And I mean, the thing is, people don't really want to die, right? When you're 15, 20, 25 years old, you really don't want to die. And like, that's what's happening now, is because the kids now are 4 generations into eating junk, and they're physiologically falling apart. There is this really deep, visceral urge to find some other way, right? Because you maybe want to have a life, and you maybe want to have kids, and you can't reproduce, and all kinds of other stuff. So, I mean, it's sad, but we're at this moment now where survival is kicking in and giving us an extra impetus to figure this thing out. So
the motivation's there.
Heartened by the fact that that's where we're at, because it's so much pain. and suffering. Now we have a reason to change our actions. And if we were comfortable, we probably wouldn't.
Right.
Complacent. So there's a silver lining there.
Let me ask you this, maybe switching gears a little bit, but out of all the data you've seen, all the incredible work you've done, what's the one thing that really stood out to you, or that has stood out to you, that said, wow, this is really interesting. I didn't know that this was happening on the farm, or that this XYZ thing affected it in this way. What's ever really stood out? Is there anything that like really surprised you or really fascinated you about some of the data that you've come across?
I'm pretty sure I knew going in. I mean, I think my hypothesis going in is fairly well justified. I mean, I did a lot of study in a bunch of different fields ahead of time, you know, to justify spending all this time and energy, raising the money and doing the research to figure it out. I mean, how big the variation is, the 20x and the 40x variation, and is like, I knew it was going to be big, but that's pretty damn big.
Right.
You know, like this carrot has 40 times as many antioxidants as that carrot, or 20 times as many polyphenols. Like that's really big. You have to eat 20 of these carrots to get as much as if you eat one of those carrots. Like that's a big number. And that was across the board on every single thing we looked at, you know, on the roots and the leaves and the fruits and the grains on these compounds. I mean, it was really
the cultural practice to get there 40 times different?
No, it's not practices. It's life. You can be certified organic and engage in certified organic practices, and most people who are organic are producing crappy quality.
Yep.
You can be permaculture, you can be regenerative, you can be local, and almost everybody who's doing those things is producing crappy quality. You can be backyard garden, you can be farmers market, and almost everybody's producing crappy quality in relation to what's possible.
Right.
What's possible is way the hell over here, and what most of us are doing is over here. And so that's the opportunity, like, is like so much more is possible. Like the bar is so low right now. Right. I mean, that's what it's if you want to think of it a certain way, like everybody else is doing a really bad job. So to be better than everybody else is actually pretty easy.
Yeah.
Like you don't have to be really good to be way better than everybody else.
Right.
You can still be doing a pretty half-assed job and be better than everybody else.
Right.
That's maybe a positive if you want to look at it that way. I think it was really nice to see the confirmation that life is what actually is required to have things function well. I thought it was great that organic and regenerative and no-till did not show up as producing excellent quality, that it was not about these individual practices or individual certification labels. It was about working well with nature. It's only when you actually are taking care of nature that you're getting positive results. And you can't just sit in some religious box. I'm a Presbyterian, you're a Methodist, we're better, you're worse. Like, you know, we no-till, you don't no-till. Like people engage in all kinds of tillage, and some kinds of tillage is very strategic and appropriate. And sometimes that no-till people have totally tight, hard dirt with no air in it, and that's not good. So we can rip apart all these dogmas and all these, you know, like I call them religions, all these religions in the movement that are false, they're false gods, right? I would say it's just been really nice. I mean, to prove that a handheld ray gun can be built to test nutrient levels. Like when we started this thing in 2012, 2014, 2016, like we were saying that, people were like, no, come on. I really like you, Dan, but just don't say stupid stuff. Like that's just stupid, you know?
Right.
And now it's like people are talking about it. Yeah, handheld meters. Yeah, So I feel like we've normalized the conversation around a bunch of stuff now that wasn't even a conversation a bunch of time ago. So I feel really excited to have been able to help move that conversation forward. But all the wisdom, all the knowledge was already there, right? Our elders already knew all this stuff. There's really nothing new here. There's nothing new. I'm standing on the shoulders of giants, you know, who go back many generations. And if you are all humble and all willing to learn and listen to the stuff that's already been found out, there's nothing new. Like we're not showing anything new. It's already
Right.
all there.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I always
just
say,
being-
the Wright brothers didn't invent flight. They just figured out aerodynamics.
they said, how the hell do birds do it?
Yeah. And what's really cool and what you're doing is that when they took off every day on that cliff, they jumped off, they were just thinking about flight. They never even thought about landing. So,
One thing at a time. One thing at a
yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We'll figure that out on
and
the way down, really, really fascinating work. So how do people get involved, Dan? What can the average, so on the Modern Farming podcast, we have people from all walks of life, right? There's a lot of us who are in farming. There's a lot of guys like Brad and I who are crop consultants, but we do have a fair amount of people who are not part of the farming complex, don't know much about it. How do they get involved? What can the average soccer mom or dad do to push this agenda and maybe get healthier food into their grocery store?
I guess the question is, what's their passion? I think we've got a lot of educational content. So actually boning up on the facts and the figures is good to, what some people like to do is they like to share ideas and tell their friends. And I think, the way we've succeeded to the degree we've succeeded so far has been through word of mouth. And it's been through people who think this is inspiring and interesting, deepening their knowledge and sharing with other people. And the act of raising awareness is of massive import, right? Just building that conversation, building that understanding, and sort of normalizing this understanding is really valuable. We've got lots of YouTubes, we've got lots of podcasts, we've got lots of courses, all online, for free, freely available. Certainly making a donation is great, $55 a year is a basic membership. That's not too much for a lot of people. So kicking in is great. We've got social media, so you can follow us there, and you can link and forward and share all the graphs and everything else out more publicly. The systemic work is the work of doing the research, and that can't happen until we get the money raised. So
Right.
all the farmers that want to be part of the project, like, you can't just send in a cucumber sample and get a nutrient density assessment, because we haven't defined nutrient density yet. And just because you got $300 and you want to sample 5 cucumbers, like, we got to raise $1 million. And we got to go through a 2-year process of defining quality before a farmer can really properly test and engage and everything else. So there's like this hurdle that is difficult because most people don't have that $1 million to play with. And then so how do you do it? I say some people tithe to a church, right? Like, some people say 10% of my income goes to a church because I believe in giving back. Well, like, call this a church of nature, call this a church of life. Like seriously consider that. Raising awareness, helping out. If you have time and energy and you got skills, I'm really good at social media. I'm really good at, I like writing papers. Like, we got all kinds of data that's been collected that could get published, but we don't have enough money to pay the people to do the statistical analysis to publish the papers. There's, depending on people's level of engagement and interest and passion, we can certainly find ways to show up. We're planning on launching a thing this spring with the refractometer, because I'm sure you're familiar with the Brix refractometer, and that is an amazing tool that we already have, which can test quality. And so we've been talking about this for years. I think we're going to pull it off this year finally. Build a database basically where everybody, and then get people to get refractometers and go do their shopping, and then get the reading and upload it into the cloud. And so we can start with like 10 people in your city in Sarasota going into the various grocery stores, bring the shopping home, like, identify what the brand was and which store you bought it in, and then you post that. And some people go to the farmer's market, and we can start bottom up assessing the nature of the supply chain now with the refractometer. Obviously, you got to squish the thing and get a reading. It's more complex than having a flash of light ray gun, but we can still do it. Refractometers cost $20. So yeah,
it's so interesting. It's so interesting you say that. I got a pretty legit one here a couple weeks ago, and now every time my daughter, she works at a farmer's market on Saturday, every time she brings home whatever it is, papayas or strawberries, tomatoes, pineapples. I'm crushing them and I'm testing every one of them and I'm looking at them. It's so funny you said that. But
and we just did this in Australia, and the numbers were not impressive.
No, there's only been one pineapple that actually was like a 18 or something, but the strawberries were all. Yeah, and we're into the season here. I'm not going to blame anybody, but they were petering out. You know, there's
4s, 5s, and 6s.
There's 4, average, good, and excellent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Almost everything is somewhere between the top of poor and the beginning of good.
Mm-hmm.
High, good, and excellent are basically impossible to find anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And strawberry growers tell me that. They tell me that it's almost impossible to reach that.
It's not impossible.
Oh, no. I've seen an 18 brick strawberry before.
It's not impossible at all.
I grew it, but I've seen it.
High quality tastes good. And when your kids get access to those, they're going to pound them, and you're going to, go paying for them because the kids are going to be pounding them. Like kids will eat their fruits and vegetables if they taste good. They just don't. That's why they don't eat them.
You're absolutely right.
It's taken so many decades of slowly getting worse and worse and worse. I mean, we know our tomatoes aren't what they were 50 years ago. That's even a commercial tomato. But then I wanted to ask you if the money wasn't, if you had the money, if you had $250 million or $500 million,
that'd be amazing.
What kind of time frame?
Give me 250. Yeah.
What kind of time frame to where you could say we can almost 90% of the fruits and vegetables and 90% of the meat.
2 years.
2 years. If you had the money, 2 years, it's over.
To properly design the study, to properly go and get the samples from around the planet in all the different growing seasons, right? And then run it all through the lab, get all the data, and then give it to the scientists to do all their work and publish it. It's a 2-year project.
Wow.
You can do 1 crop at a time, or you can do 25 at a time.
Okay.
But each one properly takes a few months to design. Then you got to go collect all the samples. You got to work with growing seasons, right? And then once you got everything collected, you got to run it all through the lab, which takes time. And then once you get that all out, then you got to give it to the scientists. So it's not going to happen tomorrow, but it's a relatively short time frame once the money's raised.
Well, I know it'll make all the difference. So I'm gonna do what I can to help you.
Man, it's really incredible.
Technology
really incredible.
We need.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and we'll do all that we can.
What's that?
At the foundation as well. So everybody who's listening and on, thank you for staying with us and joining us. I know we can talk for another 3 hours. I know, but we're going to put that website up. So everybody, if you're listening now, certainly jump on the Green Gene Foundation's website. You click on the podcast button there. There's a subscribe list to our email list. That doesn't do anything but tell you when the next podcast is available, but we'll also have some links on our Facebook page. We have a TikTok page. We have a Instagram page, and we'll definitely make all these things public so you folks can jump on the website as well and check out what Dan's doing, his entire team, the website, and how you can get involved, because as you've heard for the last hour now, this is like Star Wars kind of stuff, and this is what's going to change our food supply and the way we all live and eat every day. So Dan, thank you again for being with us this morning. Thanks for jumping on across the world from us. But we hope to have you again. We certainly hope to have you again in a couple of years when all this is wrapped up, and we hope we can do all we can to raise a couple of dollars for you.
All I got to do is raise that $250 million tomorrow, and then it'll be wrapped up in 2 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
Our website, just so people hear it, is bionutrient.org, and I think you go on the Get Involved tab is where you can join, become a member, and make a donation. So. And bionutrientinstitute.org is where we have all the science, all the data, and everything's all there for anyone who wants to look through it, etc. But thank you both.
Yeah, very cool.
Great fun. And good luck with your endeavors.
Thank you. We can't wait to have you back on. Brad, thanks for staying with us as well. I know we're getting late. Brad wakes up like at 3 a.m. So I know we're getting past his bedtime too. So thank you both, Brad, Dan. Thank everybody. And we will see you again here next week. Thank you for joining the Modern Farming Podcast.
Thanks, Dan. Take care.
Very much.